Welcome to another episode of Parenting in the Far North. I'm your host, Erin Bureau, and today's guest is a first-time mama. Her daughter is 18 months old, but her journey to become a mom wasn't an easy one. She's very open about her infertility and IVF journey and her experience. That is not something to be ashamed of. So please welcome to the podcast, Malaurie Manley. Malaurie, thanks for being here today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So glad you're here. All right, let's first congrats on becoming a mom. Welcome to the club. It's the besthood, motherhood. How's it going right now? I know 18 months is a fun stage, but it's also a very busy stage.
It is. I don't even know how to describe it. It is so much fun and so liberating and exciting to watch something just grow and develop, and also kind of scary to know that what I do shapes her as well.
Yeah.
And so it definitely has me looking back on okay, what can I improve on myself so that I can improve that for her? And it's like I've kind of made my own little mini best friend, which is a good thing and a bad thing all at the same time.
Just wait. My daughter's 8, and I say that all the time. My mini best friend. Hey, you want to go get some food? Let's go shopping. They literally will become your little live-in best friend.
The sass in her is it's unreal, which then makes me see how sassy I am. And I'm like, oh, reel that in.
Yeah.
We were at physical therapy today, and her physical therapist was like, hey, I think we need to start having her come twice a week, because she's kind of strong-willed, and when I ask her to do something, she's like, no. I'm like, okay.
Already at 18 months,
so
I love that.
It's been great, and it's been everything I had hoped for.
Oh, well, congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, let's go back to the start of your infertility journey. We've talked a little bit on email, and I know you are very passionate about and want to bring awareness to it, but tell me a little bit about that. Let's go back to your infertility journey and kind of where that started.
So my husband and I got married in 2016, and by 2018, we came together and we're like, we think we can add more to this little crew we've got going on. We have 2 dogs at home, and by 2018, him and I had been together for already 5 years, and we just felt like that was the natural next step. Mm-hmm. And so when I got off birth control, you see all these stories of I got off birth control and a month later I was pregnant, and I thought that would have happened for me. But then when I got off my birth control, I went 100 days without a cycle, which is not normal. Normal cycles are anywhere from 28 to 32 days. But I also had a lot of things that I was doing in 2018 where I was like, well, if I was pregnant this month, that'd be really not the best time. So okay, we'll try. And if it doesn't work, we'll take a break this month. And I think we did that for about 6 months. And then in November of 2018, we decided to go to a local doctor here to get some tests run, because I still had not had a cycle. And everything online says when you're trying for your family, if you're under, I believe it was 35, it can take up to a year to get pregnant. And then after 35, if it had been 6 months or less and you were really gung-ho about wanting to try to start your family, you get seen sooner. But when I had told this doctor, hey, I've had really spotty cycles. I went 100 days this summer without a cycle. She was like, we're not going to make you wait the year. You need to come in and get checked out. So I had blood tests run, and my hormone levels were that of someone with polycystic ovarian syndrome. I had really high testosterone, really low estrogen, and also my vitamin D was very low. But in Alaska, all of our vitamin D is low, right?
I was going to say, yeah.
But that vitamin is really essential in pregnancy. So I had gotten put on an off-brand drug called letrozole, which helps you ovulate. And my doctor and my husband, we decided, let's try this for a couple months and see what happens. And it wasn't working. And one of the unfortunate things is some insurances cover infertility testing and some don't. And the insurance that we were on at the time did not cover infertility testing. So my doctor was like, we'll just try a couple times and see what happens. But if this keeps happening, we need to go further into testing. And we had done letrozole and Clomid, which is basically the same thing as letrozole. We had tried that, I want to say, on and off for 7 months. And I was getting tired.
Yeah.
And I felt like I wasn't liking the care that I was getting at one doctor's office.
Mm-hmm.
So I switched to another one in 2019. And I went to a Women's Care of Alaska, and I saw Katie Ulmer, and she was amazing. And she's like, I'm here to support you, but you have this history of you trying and it's not working. We're not going to keep doing the same thing over and over again. So I did it her way once, and it didn't work. And she said, okay, let's go to IUI. So IUI is intrauterine insemination, and that is where they do a cycle where they watch your eggs. They watch and see how they develop, which was really cool because doing this process, I really got to know my body. And so we got to do these monitored cycles is what it's called. And it's an ultrasound where they look at your lining, they look at your egg, and they go, okay, you're about to ovulate. And then instead of being intimate, they take your partner's sperm and they do something called a wash. And a sperm wash is where I don't know the actual technical terms of what they do, but they spin his sperm so it gets off all of the like debris. So like cotton from your underwear or whatever may be there. And it also really gives the stronger swimmers a chance. And every time my husband had his sperm checked, I don't know if they did this for like male ego fluffing, but every time he had it looked at, they were like, wow, you've got great sperm. And I'm just like, oh, like, great.
Okay.
It's me.
It's
Hi.
me. Hi, it's
I'm
me.
the problem. So
interesting.
It was really cool, though, because I got to see his sperm after the sperm wash, and seeing it pre-wash and post-wash, there's such a difference in their mobility.
Wow.
So they really take the strongest ones that they can, and they do an insemination that way. And you still wait the 2 weeks like you would if you were trying to conceive naturally. And I was told with my hormone levels, with the way that my egg was, with the way that my lining was, like, this should have worked. And it didn't. And I was devastated.
And you only did the IUI the one time.
I only did it once, and Katie Ulmer was like, we're not, this, number one, it's expensive.
Yeah.
Number two, again, we're not going to make you keep doing the same thing, so I'm not going to do anything on you until you have testing. So now here comes January of 2020.
Oh,
where the world starts
right before
to fall.
COVID. Yeah. Oh, man.
So I had to have this test. And again, the correct term may fall slightly off my tongue, but it's called a hysterosalpingogram. And what that is you go into Providence and they flush a dye through your tubes. And if your tubes light up on the big screen, your tubes are open and it's great. If they don't light up, then your tubes are blocked. I couldn't even finish that test because the fluid was just hitting the inside of my tubes, and it was so painful.
Oh, man.
And usually with those procedures, the technicians that do them, they don't tell you. Like, they go, oh, let's wait for your doctor. I was in so much pain and crying that they were like, we're just going to tell you nothing's spilling through. Your tubes are blocked.
It wasn't lighting up at all. Wow.
And so it was nice to know how, like, what the actual problem was now. But I didn't fully understand what that meant. So I had another meeting. And Katie had suggested a different doctor from that clinic saying, you need to have surgery. And we need to consider possibly taking your tubes and doing IVF.
Okay.
And I wasn't even 30 years old at the time. I was 28. And I was like, what? I've had all of these friends have babies fairly easy. And I knew that I wanted to be a mom since I knew what being a mom was. And here I am, like, ready to go, and being told, that's not going to happen. And so I met with this doctor at that same clinic, and she was a little aggressive. And I'm really sensitive. So she came in and she was like, there's no way we can fix your tubes. You either need to remove them and do IVF that way or just keep trying to try naturally. And my husband and I looked at each other and we were like, because removing your tubes means you're sterile.
Yeah,
like,
it's a big decision.
It's 100%. You have to do IVF after this. And I listened to my feelings very, like, my inner voice generally is like, good, go and do this. And there was something in me that was like, do not do this. So a week before surgery, we schedule it for March. I pulled out, which would have happened anyway because then March, Alaska shut down.
Yeah.
So I was really able to take that time. And from March to May, I talked with my husband and I said, I think we should just go ahead and do IVF. I'm not ready to remove my tubes. And he said, okay. But at this time, there was no IVF in Alaska. And IVF, when your insurance doesn't cover it, is very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So we found ourselves looking, honestly, just Googling IVF USA. And a clinic came up that is very popular in the East Coast that does things fairly affordable. And kind of sat on it. And then one day I just pulled the trigger and was like, all right, we're going to do this. And we settled. While all their clinics are mostly on the East Coast, they did slowly start to move to Colorado. And in October of 2020.
Okay, because, I was going to ask the timeline.
Yes,
so October of 2020.
So I really took March to August being like, is this what we want to do?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if I lost weight, it would get me pregnant. Maybe if I, did all these things, it would work and it would just magically work. And I needed to sit on this, like, Malaurie, magic isn't going to make this work. If you want this to work, you need to get going. So by August, we said, all right, let's do this. And by October, they had a spot open for us. So now we are trying to communicate with a state. We do all the communicating with the East Coast, 4-hour time difference. And when you do IVF, your body has to be specifically ready. And you have a very short window. Mm-hmm. So if you miss a phone call, you could miss your whole cycle.
Oh, my goodness.
And that's thousands of dollars that you've poured into monitoring, to drugs, all of that.
So had you gone to the East Coast or had you gone to the clinic yet? You were just waiting on the go, or everything was just via phone?
Everything was via phone
Zooms
and email.
Yeah. Wow, okay.
So I'm doing this really intense, life-changing thing in the middle of a pandemic, still fairly, 28 years old. And it was really hard. And when we had gotten to Colorado and my body was not ready yet, but that was the point. We didn't want to be like, oh, you need to go and try to find a flight to Colorado in 12 hours time. So when I say they, I mean the clinic that we were working with. They gave me my hormones very slowly. And then my body decided to catch up. And when we started to do monitoring in Colorado, I was overstimulated. And being overstimulated in IVF it's not only it's uncomfortable, it's dangerous. And you take these shots at a very specific time. And when it came time to do my last shot, they actually called me and they were like, do not do it. You are going to make yourself sick.
Oh, no.
We are going to do your egg retrieval tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Do not do this. And I felt just like this inflated, hormonal, sensitive balloon. And being in Colorado with the elevation difference, it was awful. So we got the call, we're going to do your egg retrieval tomorrow. And it went great for the most part. I ended up getting 20 eggs. So we went from like nothing to like boom. We got 20 eggs. 16 were mature. Mature meaning that they're ready to accept a sperm. 12 then turned into embryos, and they really pushed us to grow our embryos to day 5. You can grow them to day 3 or day 5.
Okay.
And day 5 generally has the best outcome of a pregnancy because they've done most of the developing that they can do on the outside, and then you do the rest on the inside. So we were able to get 4 embryos total to day 5. So going from 20 to 4 was still this huge,
it's a big deal.
It's huge. And because my hormones were so out of whack, we were not able to do what's called a fresh transfer. So a fresh transfer is when the sperm and the egg have met, the embryo is grown and it's ready, and now we just put it back inside you. We had to freeze them because my body needed to recover. So that meant, okay, now we have to go back to Colorado? Okay. And it took us a while to go back. Some other things had happened where I had gotten sick and and because of my retrieval, and insurance would not cover what I needed. I needed surgery after my retrieval. And insurance being like, sorry, this is from IVF. We're not going to cover it. So from November to May, my husband and I sat there and we're like, what are we going to do? Because not only is our family now put on pause, now physically I'm put on pause because I'm sick. I had gotten a hematoma after my retrieval where they had punctured my ovary to get my eggs.
Oh my, so we're now in May of 2021. Oh my goodness. Okay.
And I'm just living in just total discomfort. Every cycle was painful. Intimacy was painful. Sometimes just walking was painful because I had this bruise on my ovary.
Were you, well, I'm assuming, yes, so you were still able to be intimate.
Yes. But
while going through the IVF journey.
But it wasn't.
Okay.
It wasn't your normal intimacy, and it was really painful. And so my husband actually had a job switch in May of 2021. And the first thing I did once he got the insurance, I was like, I need to know all your information. And thankfully, this insurance was like, if you need surgery, you need surgery. Doesn't matter how you needed surgery, we're going to cover it. So
big relief.
Oh my gosh, knowing that like my pain mattered and it didn't matter how this pain happened, but that you're willing to fix it now, even if it meant my husband and I not having children. I need me fixed to help my life. And so when in this May to August, we're waiting for surgeries and all of that, my cousin comes to me and she goes, Mallorie, I have a friend that did IVF in Homer. And I was like, no, you didn't.
You're like, Homer,
You're
Alaska?
Funny. Yeah. And I'm like, in Alaska, Homer of all places.
Yeah.
And so she's like, yeah, here's the information. And I called and I said, little birdie told me you have IVF. And they're like, yeah. And I was like, what? Okay, I would like to talk to whoever I need to talk to get some more information because I've already done my egg retrieval. I already have my embryos in a different state. I just need to know how this works. And so that's the office of Katie Ostrom, and they're amazing. Their communication with me was awesome. I didn't feel like just a number where I felt with the East Coast. I felt like they saw me as a person. So they immediately got me a meeting with their embryologist. I can't remember his last name, but Dr. Gary. And he was like, let me know your story. And so I told him our story. And he's like, so do you still have your tubes? And I said, yes. And he said, why? And I said, because knowing that if I remove my tubes, this is finite. There's no going back.
Can't put them back in.
He's like, but they haven't been working for you now. And when you have surgery, what they're going to do is they're going to remove your hematoma and also remove some scar tissue because I do have endometriosis as well. And they're going to tell me if they see a fluid in there called a hydrosalpinx. Now, again, I don't know the 100% correct term for this, but basically a hydrosalpinx detects anything foreign in your body, and it tries to push it out. So your body creates that fluid when there's scar tissue, when there's blockages in your ovaries. So if you do a transfer with that liquid in your body's going to think the embryo is something that doesn't need to be in there.
Foreign.
And push
so
it
he's
out.
saying, cautioning you to move forward with the IVF and getting the embryos in. You would need
and taking the tubes
to have the
out.
tubes
Yeah,
out.
he's
So
like, let's give you
okay.
the best. He said, so naturally pregnancy, IVF does not increase your chance of pregnancy. It just increases your chances of a baby,
Having it there to grow.
Yeah. And so
okay.
Your chances when you have this hydrosalpinx basically get cut in half. So 10, 12% of it working every month. And us spending all of this money, I need it to work. So I looked at my husband and I said, look, we have our babies. We have our little M babies. We know this is what we want to do. Let's do it. And he was 100% supportive. And he said, your body, if that's what you want to do, great, let's do it. If you don't want to do it, great, let's not do it. And that Ryan has been the biggest support. And if I have ever had an idea that I wanted to try, whether it was a tea or whatever, before
Ryan's the hubby?
Yes.
All right, shout out to Ryan.
Yes. He's always just been like, cool, where do I go get it?
Yeah, which probably gave you a lot of comfort.
It did.
To make that decision.
And so then I went to my doctor. I went to my surgeon, and I said, hey, shout out to Dr. V. I think we're going to take our tubes. And she asked me twice. She's like, are you sure? And I said, yes. She said, okay, we won't know until surgery if you need them gone.
Mm-hmm.
So we had the surgery. I woke up, and the first thing I asked was, do I still have my tubes? And she just said no. And I was relieved and sad all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Relieved knowing, okay, I did the right thing, but sad in knowing that I'm sterile. There's no going back. So by the next month, we did our transfer. And having to ship our embryos from Colorado to Alaska was so complicated. It was supposed to be a 24-hour thing. Only embryologists are allowed to touch embryos. So we had to wait for Dr. Gary to be in Alaska because he doesn't live here. He travels here every couple months.
Okay.
And so we had to wait for him to be in state, receive the embryos, and do whatever it does that they do to prep them.
Mm-hmm.
So I was told embryos were shipping on a Monday. They should arrive Tuesday. We were going to leave Wednesday to have my transfer be on Thursday. Great. Awesome. Tuesday afternoon, I get a call. Mallorie, your embryos aren't here yet.
Oh, my goodness.
And I was like, okay, what does that mean? And they said, we don't know. We're trying to we have talked to your old clinic, and they have shipped them.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to get in touch with FedEx, and they don't know. And I'm like, I don't understand what they don't know means. And she goes, I don't either. I want to keep you in the loop, though.
Mm-hmm.
Still plan on coming, but there is a bump in the road. Okay.
Oh, my goodness.
So they then called me Wednesday morning and said, your embryos are in Alaska, but we don't know where they are. Okay, do we still come? Yes, but now, if they're not here at a certain time, your transfer is canceled because they have to have enough time to thaw the embryos to make sure that they survive the thaw.
Yeah.
And that they weren't damaged in transit.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
And so
I'm on the edge of my seat.
I was on the edge of my
what?
seat.
Oh, my
So
goodness.
she goes, you're driving here, right? And I said, yeah, we're literally leaving the store to get on the road. And she goes, call me when you get to Soldotna. Okay. And Ryan, just being cool, calm, and collected, was like, it's fine. Everything is supposed to happen the way that it's supposed to happen. Don't worry. So we get to Kenai, and I call, and I'm like, please tell me you have good news. And we don't have good news. We don't know where they are.
What?
And I'm like, okay, if I see a FedEx car, I'm waving it down and being like, do you have my babies?
Oh, my goodness.
About 15 minutes after we left, they called and said, we have your embryos. Everything is okay. And I was like, oh.
What a story.
Like, minutes of being canceled, they showed up. And so we did our transfer, and it worked. I was so surprised. Within 4 days, I felt it.
Yeah.
And my husband and I were like, we're going to take a test 1 week after the transfer because I didn't want to get the call that I wasn't pregnant at work. And that Tuesday, I was like, Ryan, I feel different. I'm going to take a test. And he said, no. I'm like, what do you mean no? And he's like, we said we were going to wait. I don't want to get our hopes up. I don't want to see a negative. If it's not negative, let's wait. And I did not listen to him.
I was going to say,
I said,
or
okay.
me, and okay, I'll go do it for myself so I know.
I'm going to go take a shower and I'll be back. No, I took a test and it was positive, and I ran down and I was like, oh my
Oh,
gosh.
so you showed, okay.
Oh,
And
yeah.
what did,
He said, I'll believe it on Friday when I get the number.
he wanted to see?
But I mean, that's part
Yeah.
of infertility trauma,
Yeah,
is
it's-
getting yourself
yeah.
so excited and so hyped up, and then it getting taken away
Nothing.
from you. So then, I go through pregnancy, and towards the very end, my anxiety just started to get so bad. It was like I was experiencing prenatal anxiety. And I was so afraid of something that I worked, Ryan as well, we worked so hard to get. It was here, I was pregnant, she was thriving, she was doing great, but my mind was like, Mallorie, you're going to lose her.
Oh, my goodness. So let me back up a little bit.
Yeah.
Your pregnancy was, you had a great pregnancy.
Fairly, I mean like being
normal.
plus size and being and having endometriosis. I didn't love pregnancy. It was not my favorite thing in the world, but I loved that I was finally getting able to experience it. And but the bigger that she got, the more anxious I got of like, this isn't real. This isn't happening to you. You just got to be pregnant, but you don't get to keep her. And my brain was working overtime, and it was making my blood pressure go super high, and I wasn't sleeping. I was barely eating because I was so afraid that any wrong step I took, any wrong food I ate, something was gonna happen to Moira, and it was awful.
When did you realize, like, were you keeping this to yourself, or were you sharing this with your husband, or what?
Probably closer
What was
to
the
like
intervention of like
35 weeks where I was like, I'm struggling. I'm not sleeping. And I think it's far more than just pregnancy not sleeping. I am anxious. I am dreaming that she's not going to make it here. And by 36 and like the very tail end of my 36th week, I went to Dr. V and I was crying and I was like, I can't handle this. I need her out of me so that she's here with me because I'm so afraid. And she's like, let's wait a little bit. Let's wait a little bit. You're almost to the 37-week mark where it would be safe, but I want to wait a little bit longer. She got me in like 2 days later. And again, my blood pressure was too high. And she's like, all right, it's time. We're going to get you into the first place, whether Providence or Regional can take you. I'm going to say that you get into that first room.
Okay.
So 2 days later, I'm in the hospital. And the next day, July 11th, here comes Moira. And I realized in the hospital that something still was wrong with my brain. I was so afraid of her. I was afraid of hurting her. And
Is this after she was born, or once you were admitted?
Yeah,
and
once she was here.
Was she delivered?
I had to have a C-section.
C-section, okay.
It was 36 hours of labor to turn into a C-section because she was stuck. She was trying to come out ear first.
Oh, no.
So her neck was cocked. And it went from like, okay, Mallorie, you've been at this for a really long time. You're tired. I think you can do 2 more hours, but we also keep losing her on the monitor, which tells us that she's possibly in distress. So I'm going to give you 2 more hours. If you want to try, you can. Or if you want to be done right now, I can have that baby in your arms in an hour. And I just looked at my husband again, and I just said, I'm tired. And he said, cool, let's go have a baby. And didn't make me feel any differently having a C-section versus having a vaginal birth.
So she comes into the world, and where are you at this point?
I am exhausted, and they give you a test when you get into the mother and baby unit. They give you a test basically as soon as you get off that floor, asking you how you feel, asking if you feel safe at home, asking you if you feel anxious. And of course, it's midnight when I finally get this. She's born at 7:50 at night. It's midnight when I finally get this test. I haven't slept in for real in days. I just had a child pulled out from my body. Oh yeah, I'm going to be vulnerable and answer all these questions. And it flagged me. And I had to have someone from Child Protective Services come in and be like, do you want this? Is this something that you want? Are you safe at home? Do you want your baby? Do you have things to take care of your baby?
That night?
Yeah.
Right after you
midnight. Okay.
did.
So I had the test at midnight, and it was that next morning that somebody came in, which then amped up my anxiety even further because now is it seeming like even though, I'm a little afraid of her, that doesn't mean I don't want her.
Right. You weren't doing that bonding immediately right out the bat.
Yeah, but and so then having people come and ask me if I actually wanted my baby made me terrified of medical professionals now. And I just wanted out of the hospital. I wanted out. I thought that if I got home, got into my routine, because I'm very much a routine person, it would have been fine. It was so much worse. Moira had really, really bad reflux, and I was breastfeeding. And so anytime I laid her down, about 10 minutes after she'd laid down, she would have she would have spit up. And it would get stuck in her throat, so she would gasp. And tired, first-time mom, hormones raging. My brain told me that I was doing that to her. So I thought if I didn't touch her or didn't feed her, it would be fine. Nothing would be wrong. And I actually called my mom at like 5 a.m. I think the second day that I was home, and I was like, Mom, you were right. This is so hard. I can't do this. I need help. And she was like, I'll be there. She doesn't live in this state.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, I'm there tomorrow. I will do everything that I can to help you. And she actually called my sister-in-law. And she was like, you need to go help Mallorie, because I wouldn't let anybody in our house.
Yeah.
I was like, this is my week with my husband and my baby. I don't need any help.
How many days were you in the hospital before you were discharged?
Sunday to Thursday.
Okay.
And so Friday.
About the time, yeah, I was in there 3, so it's.
Well, when you're trying for that induction and you got a whole day, I'm going to put wasted in quotes, wasted, because you are trying so hard to get this baby out. And so then when my mom came, my sister-in-law came, my mom called her, and she's like, Mallorie needs help. Don't let her tell you no. And my sister-in-law was super sweet, and she's like, I'm going to come over with lunch, and I'm going to help you feed her, and I'm going to hold that baby, and you're going to sleep. And I didn't even tell her no. I was like, okay, thank you. And my mom was there, I think, 12 hours later, and my mom could see just both Ryan and I just how tired we were. And then I got to explaining to her a little bit more, like, Mom, I'm afraid of her. And I immediately told my doctor, who was very much on par of, let's get you help now.
Right.
Because I've developed a relationship with my doctor, so she knows who I am pre-baby, and this is not who I am post-baby. Right. And I was put on Zoloft, and I felt like it wasn't working. So I did the very irresponsible thing, and I just stopped taking it. Please don't do that. And my spiral happened again. And it was actually at Moira's 6-month appointment. So now we're at January of 23. It's Moira's 6-month appointment, and she goes to Anchorage Pediatric Group and sees Jessica Harper. She goes, so at 6 months, not only do we check the baby, we check the mom. How are you doing? And to have someone ask me, that wasn't my family, how I was doing, instant tears.
Broke, yeah.
And I was like, I'm okay. I'm fine. And she's like, I think you would really benefit from some help. Mm-hmm. So here is the name of a postpartum counselor. Do with this what you will. And I was like, okay, I'm fine. And I then really got to myself and was like, I don't need help. But at 6 months, that's when you start to move baby out of the bassinet from your room into your room. And that had made me spiral all over again. When she was sleeping, I was like, is she breathing? Is she comfortable? Is she cold? Is she
you
hot?
Were facing postpartum depression or anxiety? Or both? Anxiety was your big one. Okay.
Postpartum anxiety and postpartum OCD.
Okay.
And so I would constantly look at her monitor and stare to make sure her chest was up and down. I would check the little pulse ox that she had on her foot to make sure that her pulse was where it was overwhelming. And she got to a point where, when young kids get upset and they're regulating their breathing, they go, so she's crying. I'm trying to get her to sleep. She's crying. She finally falls asleep, and she's going in her sleep, and I panic. And I was like, she can't breathe. So I actually went in there and I woke her up after that hour of just like, Mallorie, she's fine. Let her go. And when I woke her up and was like, oh, yeah, she's fine, trying to get her back to sleep.
Yeah.
Forget it. That was when I knew I needed help. If I'm not going to let her sleep, you need help. And so I then called and I'm still seeing her now, my therapist, Rakita, and she validated everything and was like, Mallorie, this is infertility trauma. This is okay. And being able to talk with her about the things that I'm feeling and having that validation of like, it's okay that you're afraid, because not only are you afraid because of your infertility, you're afraid because you're a first-time mom. That's every mom.
Yeah.
What you're going through is it's
normal.
Valid and normal. And hearing the valid part, like, I felt selfish for being so scared of something that I've never worked so hard for something in my life. I've been very blessed that sometimes if I want something, I just got it. And so being told that, like, you need to work for this, and working for it and then being terrified of it, I felt so bad. I felt so selfish that, like, Mallorie, you did this.
Yeah.
Why are you afraid of her? And it's really opened up my eyes to, the way that our bodies work and the way that hormones can just really control your body. And having to do all this, being in Alaska and not having a lot of resources, I feel like, for these. And I remember, and I know I said this to you in our email, your story really stuck out to me because I had, in what you said, your daughter's 8. So the story was 8 years ago that, like, I remember it so well. And I remember thinking, how can somebody have a baby and be sad? I get it now.
Yeah.
You are not sad about the baby. It's what your body has done to you. And I remember watching your story and being like, that's so brave and so amazing and so selfless to come out and say, this is normal and you're not alone. And through my whole infertility process, we started this when I was 26. We did our egg retrieval at 28 and 29. My husband's a year older than me. And I didn't have anyone to talk to that was my age, that wasn't in their, like, late 30s, early 40s. And that's why now I talk about infertility, because it's so common. It's 1 in 4 couples. And so to hear that that's 25%, that's 25% of the world that really isn't talking about it. And it's normal and it's okay. And I want to be there for people the way that I didn't have that peer there for me. While I had my friends and family that were very empathetic and listened, I didn't have that person with me that said, me too. I've gone through this too. You're not alone and you're valid.
Well, I love and thank you so much for sharing your story, being vulnerable, and you being brave. Resonated with a lot that you said. So this is your chance and your platform through this podcast that we want people to listen and to know that they're not alone. And that's why sharing our stories and why Parenting in the Far North is so important and such a special place for me to do that. I will say, just for time-wise, I want to give you the word. She's 18 months old now.
Yeah.
You're here and you're sharing. How are you today? How is she?
We're doing good. I'm very much a person that appreciates routine. And I just feel like, and I'm going to say this, and there's no wood in here for me to knock on. So when I email to you tomorrow crying that it's changed.
We'll knock on the door on the way out.
It's beautiful. It's great. I don't go to therapy every week now. I'm averaging every other. But just having that continuing help and being like, am I doing the right thing? Am I saying the right thing? And it's great.
Oh, I love that.
And while I still have those fears, it's been really breathtaking and eye-opening and positive to do my best to overcome said fears. And it really makes me proud of myself. And being proud of myself isn't something that I can say easily. It's not something that I've always been like, yeah, I'm cool. And knowing that, yes, I'm doing it for me, but I'm doing it for her. Just like my mom only wanted the best for us and was trying to better herself for her, I'm bettering myself for her. And then I want to be that great role model that she knows that she can do this too. And if she ever has a problem or an issue or a body issue, I want to make sure that she can talk about it and that she doesn't feel ashamed in the future, which is why I'm doing this now.
I love that.
Thank you.
Well, I'm proud of you.
Thank you
and
so much.
Thank you for sharing your story. What a story it is. And Ryan, shout out to Ryan.
I know.
Ryan,
thanks,
too.
Ryan. I love you.
Well, thank you, Mallorie, for sharing your story. And, of course, for all of you listening to another episode of Parenting in the Far North. So don't forget to like and subscribe. Mallorie, thank you.
Thank you so much.